Given the fairly random nature of vehicle updates in Gran Turismo 7 over the course of its life so far, I'm actually kind of shocked that we still haven't seen much in the way of GT300. Of course, the lower tier, if you will, within the GT car category in a general sense, and these are fantastic cars in their own way. They're just almost always overshadowed by stuff like your Skylines and Supras, and of course those have a pretty good showing in GT7. They certainly cover the main bases. In the case of GT300, I think, to be honest with you, I actually more often than not prefer it, and I like it because there's so much more of a wild disparity in the kinds of car that you will find in GT300 versus GT500. You've got the big dogs in that kind of class, and that's basically what you always expect, but for GT300 you'll have something that looks like a baby GT1 car, like a Garaiya, next to this. Not even a super saloon, it's an IS350 in base form, not even an ISF, and of course there is an ISF race car, but this one just always appealed to me. It's definitely one of my favourite GT300s in the game, and is of course the WedsSport Lexus IS350. It's $500,000 to buy in GT6, has of course just under 300 horsepower, goes with the territory, 1150 kilos, so about the same as a GT1 car like a Maserati MC12 or a Saleen S7 from the early 2000s, so it's a nice balance, of course always within those regulations. But in terms of what this car was actually capable of, I do get the impression, for some players at least, because let's be honest, plenty of players didn't really do much GT300 car racing anyway, but for those who did, I feel like there were two cars which almost always, in fact maybe three, which mostly dominated that class. The Garaiya, the Subaru BRZ, and of course the ever popular Amemiya RX-7, particularly the updated HD version. It's cars like that though, particularly the RX-7, which I'm really shocked are not already back in GT7. You could quite feasibly put it into Group 4, you would have to of course apply balance of performance to keep it competitive, given that some of those cars do have a bit more power, but they would be perfect for that kind of racing, and in the case of something like this, I think that would be a great inclusion for Lexus. You've got a couple of great models in there, of course. The SC430 is a fairly popular Super GT car, the LFA, of course, and if the ISF were brought back, as I wish it would be, then that one would probably be quite popular as well. I don't see a huge amount of people using the Group 4 RCF. I certainly don't see many people using the normal RCF, and in terms of the GT3 version, I see some love for it, but even then, not necessarily as much as some others. It's a good car, but again, I wouldn't call it a fan favourite, at least from what I've seen online. In the case of a car like this, well, even if you didn't choose to represent Lexus all the time, I feel like if this were to drop and to be in Group 4, I think it would be massively popular. In fact, you could quite justifiably make something like a triple car update with just 3 GT300 cars. You could have the Lexus, you could have the Amemiya RX-7, and you could have either the Garaiya or the Subaru BRZ. I know personally I would choose the Garaiya over the Subaru because the BRZ, it's good, but you know, maybe stretch it to a 4-car update, let's say, just to include those 4. Even if you only ever added those 4, you've pretty much covered all the bases that many fans would want. Of course, there's other ones here and there that you could always add, but those are really strong contenders in GT300, and certainly if you're appealing to the more nostalgic side of adding cars back into the game. Of course, the whole point of going back to these selected, specific GT6 videos is to talk about cars which I do believe have a good chance of coming back, and this is definitely one of them. With the way things are going, I mean, a few months ago I would have said there probably wasn't much of a chance to see these coming back in GT7 because it feels like the game's too far in its life cycle to add something this significant, but then we kind of are still getting significant changes happening, such as with my first Gran Turismo being added tangentially, or various other updates or really high profile vehicles which I wouldn't have expected to be years after the game's release, which is cool for those who are still playing and enjoying the game, but it's curious from a life cycle of the game perspective to add it so late. So I would have said before there's no chance. Now I guess there kind of is a chance maybe for some GT300s, and if I recall correctly, I think at least the Garaiya, I want to say, possibly the Amemiya, I don't recall though, might have been in the leaked data mining list. I think the Garaiya was, if I recall correctly, so clearly they have some intention of bringing that back. We'll have to see in the long run. I would say this one's probably a bit less likely than some of the others, but I would certainly love to see it back. I would love to hear if you were a fan of this one back in the day though, and I think another reason why I always like this one is that low down kind of midpoint driving position feels kind of like a baby DTM car, and that will never not be fun. Of course, I will see you in future for more cars which I do think have a chance of coming back, and of course check out the other ones which I've already talked about if you haven't already. That's it for this vid. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.